Ghana, home to the powerful Ashanti Empire and the coastal Fanti states, was one of the wealthiest and most organized regions in pre-colonial Africa. The people were known for their strong leadership, advanced trade networks, and military power. Yet, just like in East Africa and Burkina Faso, the initial hospitality shown to European traders was later exploited, leading to colonization. The betrayal in Ghana followed a familiar pattern. Outsiders arrived as traders, gained trust, and then used deception and force to take control. But Ghana's story is also one of fierce resistance, from the wars of the Ashanti to the independence movement led by Kwame Nkrumah. Ghana's coast was so rich in gold that the Portuguese named it the Gold Coast when they arrived in 1471. The Akan people, including the Fanti and Ashanti, were master traders and welcomed the Portuguese as business partners. The Portuguese were followed by the Dutch, British, and Danes, all seeking to trade in gold, ivory, and later, enslaved Africans. At first, the trade seemed mutually beneficial. The Fanti and other coastal groups controlled the transactions, while the Ashanti Empire, ruling inland, continued expanding its power. But slowly, the Europeans built forts along the coast, such as Elmina Castle, 1482, and Cape Coast Castle, initially used for trade, but later turned into prisons for enslaved Africans. The Ashanti and Fanti leaders, seeing their guests as business partners, allowed this expansion without realizing that these forts would soon be used for conquest. The hospitality they showed to European traders gave the foreigners the foothold they needed. The Ashanti Empire, one of the most powerful kingdoms in West Africa, did not trust the British as easily as some coastal groups did. However, they still attempted diplomacy at first, hoping to maintain trade relations. When the British began interfering in local politics, the Ashanti saw it as a threat but did not immediately go to war. This hesitation allowed the British to strengthen their position. By the 19th century, the British no longer wanted to trade with the Ashanti. They wanted to rule them. In 1824, tensions erupted into the First Anglo-Ashanti War, which saw the Ashanti defeat the British. However, instead of pushing the British out completely, the Ashanti made peace, believing that diplomacy could work. The British, however, had other plans. They regrouped and attacked again in the Second Anglo-Ashanti War, 1873 to 1874, burning the Ashanti capital, Kumasi. Once again, the Ashanti attempted diplomacy, believing they could negotiate their way out. But in 1900, the final betrayal came. The British demanded that the Ashanti hand over the sacred golden stool, the symbol of their sovereignty. This was too much. Led by Yasantua, the Ashanti Queen Mother, the people launched the War of the Golden Stool, fighting fiercely to protect their heritage. Though the British eventually won, the Ashanti never fully submitted, and their resistance delayed full British control over the region. The British used another tactic to colonize Ghana, turning Africans against each other, while the Ashanti resisted British rule. The Fanti Confederation, a coastal alliance of Akan states, initially allied with the British against the Ashanti. They believed that by working with the British, they could maintain some level of independence. However, once the Ashanti were weakened, the British turned on the Fanti as well. By 1874, the same British forces that had promised protection stripped the Fanti of their sovereignty, making them part of the British colony. The Fanti, who had once welcomed the British as guests and allies, realized too late that their hospitality had been used against them. The kindness that had brought trade had ultimately brought colonial rule. By the early 20th century, Ghanaians had learned a painful lesson. Colonial rulers never honored their agreements. Inspired by past betrayals, a new generation of leaders, including Kwame Nkrumah, pushed for complete independence. Nkrumah understood that only unity could defeat colonial rule. He called for all Ghanaians, Ashanti, Fanti, Yu, and others, to put aside past divisions and fight together. In 1957, Ghana became the first African country to gain independence from colonial rule, setting an example for the rest of Africa. The story of Ghana teaches several key lessons. 1. Kindness must be paired with caution. The Akan people welcomed Europeans as traders, but those traders later became rulers. 2. Divide and conquer is a powerful weapon. The British used internal rivalries to weaken Ghanaian resistance. 3. Resistance works, but unity is stronger. The Ashanti fought bravely, but Ghana only won independence when all groups united. Today, Ghana stands as a proud nation, aware of its past and determined never to repeat the mistakes of history. The spirit of Yasantua, the Ashanti warriors, and Kwame Nkrumah lives on, reminding Ghanaians that trust is valuable, but it should never be given blindly. By the time Ghana gained independence in 1957, it had already endured centuries of deception, betrayal, and resistance. From the early days of trade with Europeans to the Ashanti Wars and the Fanti's painful realization that their allies had become conquerors, Ghana's journey was filled with hard lessons. But even after independence, the struggles did not end. The betrayals continued, this time, not from colonial rulers alone, but from within. When Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to independence, he dreamed of making it a powerful African nation, free from foreign control. However, he underestimated how deeply colonial powers had embedded themselves in Ghana's economy and politics. The British had left, but they still controlled Ghana's resources through multinational companies, economic policies, and political influence. Nkrumah saw this and tried to break free, pushing for industrialization, building Ghana's own factories so it wouldn't rely on imports. Pan-Africanism, uniting African nations to resist neocolonialism. Self-reliance, reducing dependence on Western aid and investment. These ideas threatened Western interests, and soon Ghana faced economic sabotage, internal opposition, and foreign interference. In 1966, Nkrumah was overthrown in a coup, backed by Western powers. His own military and politicians, some of whom he had trusted, turned against him. Once again, Ghana faced betrayal, this time from within. After Nkrumah's fall, Ghana entered a period of instability, with multiple military coups between 1966 and 1981. Each new leader promised to fix the country, but corruption, greed, and foreign influence kept pulling Ghana back. Leaders who had once spoken against colonial rule became puppets of foreign governments, allowing Ghana's resources to be exploited once again. One of the most critical turning points came in 1981, when Jerry John Rawlings, a military officer, led a coup against the corrupt government. Rawlings promised to end the betrayal and return power to the people. His leadership brought stability, but Ghana had already lost decades of development due to internal conflicts and external interference. Even after Ghana stabilized, Western powers found a new way to maintain control: economic colonialism. Ghana was pressured into taking loans from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, which came with strict conditions. These loans forced Ghana to privatize industries, allowing foreign companies to take over key sectors, cut social services, making life harder for ordinary Ghanaians, reduce government control, limiting the country's ability to protect its own economy. Even after Ghana stabilized, Western powers found new ways to maintain control, this time through economic colonialism. The same countries that had colonized Ghana now used debt and financial institutions to dictate its policies. Ghana, like many newly independent African nations, was pressured into taking loans from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank. These loans came with strict conditions, including privatizing industries, selling Ghana's state-owned companies to foreign investors, who then controlled major sectors like mining, banking, and telecommunications, cutting social services, reducing funding for education, healthcare, and agriculture, making life harder for ordinary Ghanaians, opening markets to foreign competition, making it difficult for local businesses to grow while multinational corporations took over. This was a new kind of betrayal, one that didn't involve direct military conquest, but instead controlled Ghana through financial dependency. The same hospitality that had once welcomed foreign traders was now being exploited through unfair trade deals and economic policies that favored outsiders. Ghana's political leaders, eager for foreign aid and support, often played into these neocolonial traps. Some leaders promised to fight for economic independence, but ended up enriching themselves instead. Corruption became a major issue, with politicians making deals that benefited foreign corporations, while ordinary Ghanaians suffered. This pattern repeated itself over the decades. Rawlings' leadership, 1981 to 2000, brought stability and some economic growth, but also introduced IMF-backed policies that hurt local businesses. The 2000s saw democracy flourish, but corruption and dependency on Western aid continued. Ghana's gold and oil boom, 2010s, promised wealth, but much of it was controlled by foreign companies, leaving little for the people. Even today, Ghana struggles with the legacy of these betrayals. While it remains one of Africa's most stable and democratic nations, it still faces economic struggles, foreign interference, and political challenges that trace back to its history of colonial deception. Lessons from Ghana's journey. 1. Hospitality must be protected with wisdom. Ghana's kindness to traders was used against it, just like in other parts of Africa. 2. Divisions make a nation vulnerable. The Ashanti-Fanti rivalry helped the British take over, just as political corruption weakens Ghana today. 3. Independence is more than a flag. Ghana was the first African nation to gain political independence, but economic independence is still a struggle. 4. Foreign control never really left. Colonialism changed its form but never disappeared. Today it operates through debt, trade policies, and corporate control. Despite these challenges, Ghana remains a symbol of African strength and resilience. The spirit of Yasantua, Kwame Nkrumah, and the Ashanti warriors lives on in Ghanaians who continue to fight for true independence, not just politically, but economically and culturally as well. Ghana's story serves as a warning and a lesson for all of Africa. Never let kindness be mistaken for weakness, and never allow foreign interests to control your destiny. Ghana's struggle didn't end with independence in 1957, or even with the economic crises of the late 20th century. Today, the country continues to battle modern forms of neocolonialism, where foreign powers still influence its economy, politics, and resources, but Ghanaians are fighting back, using technology, education, and Pan-African unity to reclaim their destiny. Ghana is one of the richest countries in Africa in terms of natural resources, gold, oil, cocoa, and bauxite. But who truly benefits from these resources? Gold mining. Ghana is Africa's largest producer of gold. But foreign companies, mainly from Europe, the US, and China, control most of the mines. Only a small percentage of the profits stay in Ghana. Oil boom. In 2007, Ghana discovered oil, and hopes were high for economic transformation. But just like with gold, multinational corporations control the industry, leaving Ghana with a fraction of the wealth. Cocoa industry. Ghana and Ivory Coast produce over 60% of the world's cocoa, yet they make less than 10% of the chocolate industry's profits. The real money is made in Europe and America, where the cocoa is processed. This is economic colonialism in action. Ghana produces the wealth, but outsiders take most of the profits. Ghana has started to push back. 1. The gold mafia crackdown. The government has begun renegotiating mining contracts to increase Ghana's share of gold profits. 2. Cocoa control. Ghana and Ivory Coast have formed a coalition to demand fair prices for cocoa, refusing to sell cheap to Europe. 3. Local oil refining. Ghana is investing in its own oil refineries to reduce dependency on foreign companies. But the battle is not over. Powerful international interests still try to keep Ghana dependent on foreign aid and controlled by unfair trade deals. Even though Ghana is one of Africa's most stable democracies, corruption remains a major issue. Many politicians have betrayed the people, making deals that benefit foreign investors while ordinary Ghanaians struggle. Election manipulation. Some leaders have used foreign backing to stay in power, just as colonial powers once used African rulers to control territories. Debt traps. Ghana's leaders continue to take loans from the IMF and World Bank, keeping the country in economic bondage. Youth rebellion. A new generation of Ghanaians is demanding change, protesting against corruption and pushing for economic reforms. Ghana's young population is fighting back against corruption and foreign control. Fix the Country movement, a social media-driven protest demanding better governance, economic reforms, and an end to corruption. Entrepreneurship boom. Young Ghanaians are starting their own businesses, reducing reliance on foreign companies. Pan-Africanism revival. Inspired by Kwame Nkrumah's vision, many are working towards greater unity with other African nations to break free from foreign control. Ghana stands at a crossroads. The same hospitality and openness that once led to betrayal can now be used as a tool for strength, if managed wisely. The future of Ghana depends on 1. Breaking the cycle of economic colonialism. Ghana must take full control of its resources and industries. 2. Holding leaders accountable. Corrupt politicians must be removed, and new, ethical leaders must take charge. 3. Investing in local industries. Instead of exporting raw materials, Ghana must build its own factories to process gold, cocoa, and oil. 4. Strengthening Pan-Africanism. By working with other African nations, Ghana can fight against unfair global systems. Ghana's past has shown that kindness without wisdom leads to exploitation. The country has been betrayed multiple times, first by European traders, then by colonial rulers, and later by corrupt leaders. But Ghanaians have always resisted and fought back. Now the new fight is for economic independence, self-reliance, and true sovereignty. The spirit of Ya Santua, Kwame Nkrumah, and the brave warriors of the past still burn strong. The question is, will Ghana finally break free, or will history repeat itself? The future is in the hands of the people.